That's a good movie, right? Woo. So we're joined by Michael Townsend and Bert Crenca. I'm going to ask a few questions and get everything going. We're going to have time for questions from you guys as well. But I want to start off by asking Bert something. Real Artways was started by artists. There were 4 artists who got together and found a kind of dilapidated space in downtown Hartford that they moved into and created a space where they could make art. And here we are almost 50 years later, and we're still alive and still doing things. They're not the same people. I didn't say that right. Some of the same people are still alive, they're just not here. But Bert, I wanted to ask you, Bert was the founder of AS220 in Providence, a place that was all about artists. And looking at this wonderful experience, this wonderful movie, I just want to ask, and looking at Providence, comparing it to Hartford, where we all are, and Bert, I wonder if you could just talk about the impact that artists have on Providence. How important are artists to what Providence is today?
It's a big question, but I think that Providence really did truly go through a renaissance. I think we're all suffering again, a variety of reasons, some very obvious. And artists really were sort of the catalyst of seeing our city differently. Artists living in like Fort Thunder looked at these what were at the time undervalued spaces and saw perfect places for them to create uninhibitedly. And I like to think of these as generative spaces where ideas, leaders, people, art come from. And it's sort of these free environments that allow that and allow anything to happen. When AS220 was started in an illegal loft with a bunch of us living there with kerosene heaters in the same way as all of this. And it was, with AS220, it was about an unjuried, uncensored environment where anybody could participate, continue to grow it, create labs and tools and spaces where people could experiment and could develop. Because we believe this is good for our society and our culture. We can get into a variety of discussions about that, and I don't want to prolong the response, but did I respond appropriately?
Bert, whatever you say is appropriate. The urbanist Jane Jacobs had a great thing to say about where creativity happens, and she said that if a city wants to have new ideas, it has to have old buildings. That's where you can get a foothold. One of the things that was remarkable about this experience, Michael, was that you did a new idea in a new building.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we got pushed into it, so yes.
Talk
Okay, yeah,
about that
I don't feel like Buddy Cianci, the mayor that they were poking fun at here, actually thought the arts was good and that it would be a good catalyst to support artists and to start creating interest in the city through the arts and stuff. So, answering Will's question, we were very conscious, politicians and urban developers, people later, were very conscious of how to use the arts to bring interest and value to things. And we did that. We looked at spaces, like an empty space in the mall, and turned it into something productive, actually, in a creative way that you can't commodify. Yeah, but go ahead.
No.
That's enough.
Go, Michael. I feel like you have something to say.
Yeah, the great tragedy that kicks off this whole project is the loss of these big industrial mill spaces that all of us artist folks had set up shop in. Around the epicenter of Fort Thunder, there was 300 to 500 artist live work spaces all happening at the same time. And that lasted for a powerhouse of maybe like 10 to 15 years where it really peaked. And then after the mall was built, there was sort of a free-for-all of development ideas. And the one that went through our neighborhood, of course, ended in the result of my home getting knocked down and setting me on a 2-year journey of fighting City Hall to save all the other mill buildings that were right next to me. My God, they wasted my time. So for several years, I fought fought with City Hall, against City Hall and city planners and these developers, saving several mill buildings. Here's some irony for you. Those mill buildings that we saved, they're like, well, this wasn't part of our plan. They turned them into condos. And those condos became the most successful part of their project. And then ironically, those condos now are selling for $500, $600, $700, $800,000. And therefore, I helped save the buildings that now gentrify me out of my own neighborhood. So this is one of the ironies of putting up a fight like that. In my early 30s, when those fights were happening, I only knew one thing, is save the building, save the historical context, that you're doing a good job. In my 50s, it's save the building, save the historical context, and fight to program what goes inside of them. This is where Bert is my absolute hero, because he took a space that was, one of these illegal live workspaces, created and expanded it into an empire where he's buying buildings. And he actually created, where we're just so loosey-goosey through these places, he actually created spaces that are permanent, that are models for other cities to explore how to do it right. And we owe him a huge debt of gratitude for that. And this is happening simultaneously. So both of us are fighting the city and winning in different ways. And I end up doing the microist version, which is building the secret apartment in the mall. So that's my contribution.
We're in this interesting moment where the downtown Class A office space is now the empty space. In the aftermath of COVID.
Yeah.
Has there been any movement in Providence to utilize that space in a different way?
Well, knowing some of the developers personally, because I courted them for decades to support our project, they don't have answers.
No.
They really don't have any answers. First floor retail in downtowns does not work. So they try to fill it with restaurants and bars. That only goes so far. I will tell you that all of the condominiums that were built in downtown Providence are occupied, not at anything that we, at least me and him, could afford, for sure. But it's not enough to sustain first floor retail businesses at all. Like the restaurants open and close like there's no tomorrow. Like there's no tomorrow. And I mean that sincerely. What I do have to say, though, is there's a whole new generation of young artists that are finding new ways. I mean, art will happen.
Yep.
Can't not happen. It's just what we're made of. We got to do it.
Yeah. It just gets pushed around.
Who has a question or a comment, or do you have something else you want to say?
Oh, no, I want to hear some questions.
Okay.
About anything.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna start with you, the hand right in the middle right in the middle, you. Yes, you had your hand up and you're looking at me like, me? Yes, you, with the glasses and the hair parted on the side.
My question is, I'm wondering if you would be happy or perhaps frustrated if they did turn part of the mall into a living space.
Oh, I'd be super psyched.
If it was affordable, would you be happy?
I'd be more happy for that. I did say that. I said that loud to the people that own the mall right now. I was like, if you put affordable housing in here, I will shill for you so hard. So, update on the mall. The mall is bankrupt all the way down. $255 million in the hole. Last fall, they were given a receivership. That means they were given a financial babysitter. This is a group that comes in and says, well, we didn't make the problem. We're going to try to help steer you out of this. The person who's the receivership for the mall is also the receivership for Eagle Square, and it's like, that blows my mind. So you're telling me that it was
what Eagle Square.
So Eagle Square is where Fort Thunder was.
So that's bankrupt too?
That's bankrupt also. So you're telling me the two development projects that affected my life the most are now bankrupt. And why are they bankrupt? Because their first move, mostly Eagle Square in particular, their first move was kick out all evidence of culture. Every artist, we're gonna wipe them under the rug. They actually, it was our mayor who made them offer spaces to artists, and they offered us, we were paying maybe $1.50, $2 a square foot, and they offer spaces for $15 a square foot, which was below commerce rate. Obviously, no one could take it, and they're like, well, we don't know why artists don't want to live or work here. And they blamed it on us collectively. The mall is suffering. The mall obviously failed as a pure commerce retail equation, and they need to figure out how to serve the people of Providence as a whole human being. Living, an option. Health services, an option. Nonprofits, where you can bring a child to a mall and you can go shopping and they can learn how to play the violin or learn something, that'd be amazing. There are so many ways that the mall could still be profitable while being humanistic. Something that's more driven towards sustainability instead of just pure profit, because obviously that did not work.
It's interesting that some of these patterns happen through time. I'm thinking about Real Artways. When it was started, it was, like I mentioned, 4 artists in a space, and they had to leave that space because of, it was actually where Max Downtown is. There was a 2-story building there. So when City Place was being built, Real Artways had to leave. And their second location was across from the old State House. And when that was developed, they had to leave from there. And then their third location, they had to leave and ended up here. So it was all this gentrification, or it was really real estate developed in the downtown area. But it created my favorite headline in the Hartford Courant, which said, "Parking garage to replace avant-garde art center." And when we build our cafe, we're gonna take that story and blow it up and put it on the wall in the cafe.
I gotta say, ASU20, I'm way retired from ASU20, and I'm just in my studio every day, and it's been wonderful to come to that at some point in my life. But ASU20 developed 100,000 square feet of space in downtown Providence, historic restorations. And by the way, as I'm telling you that retail doesn't work on the first floors, all of the first floor retail spaces at ASU20 are rented, and most of them from the beginning of when we developed those buildings. Why? Because Roberto DeBarba was there, and he's still there, okay? We opened up the first really Latino-owned business in the downtown. We opened it in our place. We insisted on the gay bar that was in our place, take the curtains off, okay? This is all fact, The Key Place, still there. The 2 local kind of bars, hang out, watch the ball game bars, are still in these buildings. When we took those buildings, they were falling in on themselves. They were in horrible, horrible disrepair. We did perfect historic restorations of each of the 3 buildings while retaining these tenants. All of the retail spaces in the buildings are still occupied. So as Michael says, there's ways of doing things that could be better.
All right. Yes, right here in front.
Hi,
Hi.
I have probably a million questions.
Can everybody hear?
Yeah.
She has a million questions. Do we have time for one?
No, but I'm only gonna narrow it down to one, and I found you prior to the break. This is a little tangential to the entire conversation of the mall, but during the scene around the outdoor, the body,
The tunnels?
the body tunnels.
Yeah.
Thank you. A commentary was made related to labeling and the distinct decision to not label or explain to folks what was happening or what they were seeing. And within museum and gallery culture, I think now and forever, there's a conversation of to label or not to label. And I want to just know where you are today in this moment. How do you feel about labeling, not labeling, explaining to folks what they're seeing, but they aren't seeing? Should you not? I want to hear your thoughts. Umberto, Michael, and Will.
All right, so in my public art practice, my main through line of public art is doing tape art on walls. So I spend a lot of time standing in the public, and I am the labeler. which means that anyone can walk up to me at any time and be like, what are you making here? And I can have a conversation with them about it. And sometimes that conversation will actually change the direction of a mural. Like, we're completely open to sort of build on the knowledge that we're getting in real time. That said, when we step away from a mural, we have never signed anything. We have never left no QR codes, no websites, no nothing. We find it very important for people to experience art in a raw form where they'll seek knowledge about it, and it's just them alone with the art. I think that's a really powerful experience to have. That said, I think it's at its best when we are there and we have the most perfect triangle. The art that's being made, an audience person, and the artists themselves. For us, that's when it's really happening. That's why when we finish our work, we tear it down 24 hours later. So I have for 35 years been making large-scale murals. Those sometimes take days to weeks on end to finish, and when I finish them, they are gonna be gone within a day. With the one exception being the healing arts. Anything that's done in the wake of tragedy, we leave those for the communities to decide when they need to remove them. In the case of the tunnel was built, a very personal project. I dropped out of society for 6 months to build that. I showed it to 13 people in my life. That's one of them. And I put a lock and chain on it and walked. Again, no labels, and I spent the next 8 years hearing stories about who made it. And I like that. I like that people got to have the experience of finding like an archaeological dig of an underground society where they got to make up what the narrative is, feel the raw power of it. I think even one word would have disrupted that whole thing.
I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with either approach. And as a matter of fact, because in many cases the arts and the fine arts are pretty exclusionary, right? And as a result, there's a huge vocabulary gap that occurs, right? So, and of course, that serves itself. It's self-serving in terms of creating an elite language that only a few people seem to have access to, okay? So if you're doing museum exhibits and you're breaking some of this down and demystifying some of the bullshit language that critics and people who have to self-sustain their positions as museum directors or whatever it is, or in many cases artists as well. Anything that we do to sort of demystify that, break that down, and help make the arts more and more accessible and cross-culturally. And I don't mean cross-culturally that everybody gets experience, but that I learned the vocabulary of West African art, you know, and understand that. And by the way, we all share a common language of design, right? So concepts of repetition and, you know, what a diagonal does in an image, that's all cross-cultural stuff. It's like the 5-note blues scale, which exists in every culture in the world as far as we know, as far back as we go, right? So explaining things, helping demystify things can be a good thing. It can be overdone. It can be condescending. You know, and there's just a lot of things about that has flaws. But intrinsically, either approach. Keeping the imagination stuck on this thing where like, what the hell are they trying to say here is awesome, right? Working the muscle, you know? Anyway, enough of that.
Beautiful answers. I think there's so many different ways to look at art, and one of the things that comes up that's most inspiring are the questions that come out of it. And sometimes labels can be very definitive. I think sometimes the people who are writing them feel like they have to be definitive and kind of all-knowing in some way, or present maybe an art history perspective. And there's so many different ways to look at art. We have kids come through here all the time with our art, and one of the things we tell them, I was talking to Bert earlier, we tell them there's not going to be any test. There are no wrong answers. Whatever you think, whatever you feel is exactly what you should be thinking or feeling. And I had a kid come up to me after one of the presentations, and he said, I didn't know you could talk about art in so many different ways. And to me, it's the conversation that's so important.
Susan, did you have a question?
I just wanted to make a point that in the 49 or 48 live spaces that ASU 20 developed downtown, all but like 9 of them were affordable housing for artists.
Oh.
So that's something that is gonna stay, as long as those buildings survive, those affordable spaces are gonna be there, and that's really important.
Huge. Huge.
And, yes, sir, right there.
So, just a question. I was actually a student at Providence College from 2002 to 2006.
Go Friars.
Yeah. Spent an inordinate amount of time in the Providence Place Mall.
Yeah.
Can't believe this was going on right under my nose. Totally would have been with you guys 100%. But I would hear all these stories about Foleyville, Lightning Bolt, that whole scene.
Yeah.
And I had just missed it by a couple of years. I was lucky enough to go to the living room a number of times.
The
right?
Whitney Biennial, Fort Thunder was well represented.
Okay. But just, obviously the point was to keep the place secret, but was there any thought to like reach out to the artists of those communities to maybe like inspire them to create their own secret apartments, almost like a network if they like, was there any, communication among your people, anything like that?
I love that conceptually. This was obviously a very private project we were working on, and the footage was never meant to be seen by anybody.
Sure.
Like what we're doing here today, I had no idea this was ever gonna unfold. That response, that specific response, is not a great response for everybody. I would never imagine that someone would model this as a way of protest.
Okay.
It was hyper specific to our needs at the time. And after 2 years of fighting developers and being like in those meetings and watching them with their manifest destiny mentality, that any underutilized space that they had a God-given responsibility to develop it, by the time we stumble into this space, I'm furious. I'm depressed about having lost my home, and it just all fell into place immediately.
Sure.
So I think it's very sort of a time and space specific.
Sure.
That said, the movie does a good job of sort of showing a wide buffet of ideas about action or protest, but at least about putting energy in a positive place when you're feeling overwhelmed by the circumstances. And the movie maybe will do a better job than I could as far as outreach. It would definitely. More people would see this than I could ever reach personally.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yes, in the middle, right there.
So you said you've never imagined it to become a documentary like this. How did the filmmaker Jeremy Workman convince you to do this?
Yeah, so when this story broke in 2007, it becomes international news. I was arrested. I went before a judge. When I got out of the court, I went straight to the Children's Hospital, did my work there, and then I retreated to our local newspaper, the Telegram Gazette, and I stood outside and I waited for a journalist.
Yeah.
And this journalist showed up. I was like, okay, look, it's Thursday. You're about to get the most bonkers police blotter. Don't ruin this. It's a really great story, and I want to work with you. Give me 3 days over the weekend, slow your roll, and we'll make this a good story. And they did it for 3 days. We spent hours together, and we had conversations about it because it was the first time I was responsible for it being an art project of any kind, because there was no audience. But as soon as this thing gets leaked, we have responsibilities to figure out who's the face of it, what's the narrative, simplify it. This story is simple enough that countries from all over the world picked up on it. And we're being called from Hong Kong, South Africa, India, Ireland, Norway. Everybody has a reason why they like this story. And then Hollywood. Hollywood is about to have a writer's strike, and they're seeing deep interest in this story, and we're getting calls constantly. Movie deals, book deals, TV deals. And our team of 8 artists are like, no, we're not doing it.
It's crazy.
We're not doing it because this is a narrative that's doing well on its own. Like, why would we put our faces on it? Like, why would we minimize the way people are enjoying this? And that meant for the next 17 years, I get calls from directors and filmmakers asking me to make it into a movie, and as time goes on, their ideas get dumber and dumber. You know? And then, 2019, I'm in Athens, Greece. I've been hired to do a tape art mural. I'm on top of an opera house on a glass structure. I'm drawing for a week outside the structure. I'm looking inside and I see a famous YouTube domino artist. Her name is Lily. She's amazing. She's one of the few people from YouTube I can recognize by face. I'm like, there is a super famous person in there, and there's a man with a camera. Who is that guy? So that guy is Jeremy Workman. He was filming the documentary, Lily Topples the World. We happened to be in the same space. We struck up a friendship. During the course of talking to him for a week, I just started throwing around art projects. I told him about Secret Ball. He did not believe me. He went home, he Googled it. He's like, oh my God. They're not kidding. I showed him one tiny clip of moving something up the ladder, and maybe a year or two later, he contacted me after Lily Topples the World was over. I had seen one of his films. I had seen The World Beneath Your Feet. It's great. It's about a guy who walks every single street of New York City for 12 plus years. So I like his films. I get to see him as a filmmaker. I get to trust his process because I'm watching him interact with the subject. And so he reached out to us. I was like, you know what? This is it.
Yeah.
If this guy can convince the other artists to get on board, then we've got our guy. And this is something that Jeremy is very good at, is getting other people to say yes. And then on top of that, he has to do the hard work of coming to Providence and finding all the talking heads that are going to provide context for why this whole thing happened in the first place. And he was game for all of it. And I handed him the hard drive. So the hard drive has all the footage from the secret mall apartment that no one's ever seen. He's the first person to ever go through all of it. And he basically came back with a hard yes himself as a filmmaker. He's like, you have the bones of a documentary on this hard drive. And he's an absolute expert. He's the best editor, awesome filmmaker, and that's it. So we weren't looking for it. We just sort of stumbled into it, but that's the whole sort of narrative of how it came to be. And he put in the hard work, and it shows. So we owe him a debt of gratitude.
Some of you might have seen The World Beneath Your Feet at Real Artways. We showed that here.
Yeah.
It was a very popular film here.
Very good.
Any other questions? Yes, sir, right here. Yes, you.
The entrance looks harrowing.
It is.
Did you ever get lost?
It is, so as you can see, Jeremy went into film. And so I wasn't gonna go back into the mall. One of my favorite FaceTimes of all time. Because he was like, I had drawn him a map on how to do it. He had entered into that space and he called me. He's like, where do I go now? I was like, FaceTime me. And it's a relatively straight shot, but there's changes in altitude. And that's the challenging part of that journey. It is dangerous. There are drop-offs some places of 1 stories and 2 stories. It's obviously not designed for people. But the mall accidentally provided us a private entranceway to the space that we would turn into a home.
Yes, right here.
I feel like the movie had a lot of like early aughts nostalgia to it. And I just enjoyed seeing the different technology that you had back then. And you talked about 9/11.
Yeah.
And I just was wondering if you had any insight into like how the world is maybe the same or different. And
Yeah.
considering a group doing this today, like how would they even be able to get away with it?
So this is actually a really, really important question because to put it in, so we'll do one little bit of dating the movie. I get arrested, the project ends about 3 months after the iPhone's released. So that gives you a sense of where we are technology-wise. So the cameras we're using are dead ends. That means that you kept your image, it goes onto a memory card and that's it. Like you dump it into a hard drive. It takes a lot of effort to actually share it. And there's no culture of sharing it. I do not have confidence that in 2025, if we had the same circumstances, we lost our home or we're bummed out, that we could pull this project off.
No.
I just couldn't happen, right? Because I think that not necessarily within our own group, but I just think that because people, the security state, as it were, which includes all of us, we're always pointing cameras, we're always curious. someone's gonna just post, be like, look at these dummies with the couch walking around the parking lot. Like, oh, who's this guy like walking around the cinder block for no reason? That's what would tank us. Our group was very, very tight and very, very secretive, but inevitably in the culture of sharing, someone looking at through their phones would be like, what's this?
But that's what now we gotta find a new way to kick the culture in the ass.
I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that's what we'll do, you know,
Yep, yep.
and unavoidably, we can't help ourselves. And it's part of all of us, you know, it's not like artists are some privileged, segregated class, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We all have this creativity in us, we're born with it, it's a skill to survive that we all have. We do it somehow when we're cooking soup, I don't know, you know, whatever. But, there'll be another way of kicking in the ass. Like, I don't get paranoid about new technologies as an artist at all. They've been coming as long as we've been on the planet. We'll probably we have developed technologies that can wipe us off the planet, actually. I'm ranting, this is not good. But it's just the idea that artists will react. That's what we do. We try to create new perspectives. I mean, what does it mean to live in the present? We probably have all adopted that philosophy now. We gotta live in the present, we gotta live in the present. It means being aware. It means seeing shapes over there that are abstract and you frame it like this and holy shit, that's cool. But it's just a wall, you know? And a space that means absolutely nothing and redefining it in a way that has purpose. Right? This is what generates culture. This is what keeps us alive. This is where we find our commonality. Shut up, Bert.
Round of applause for Bert. We have time for 2 or 3 more questions. Way in the back there. Yes.
Hi, I'm really interested in this kind of concept that's, I think you've spoken quite a bit about this idea of like what makes a place public versus private and so on. And I mean the fact that you bring in the door and the lock comes in so far down the line is really interesting. But I was interested in, at that point it sort of does become very definitively a private space, and I wondered, did you feel like you lost something, or was it more just an act of, like, how did it kind of change the space, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So let's talk about the mall first of all. So the malls are always like a huge paradox because they masquerade themselves as public spaces. Everyone goes there thinking, oh, well, this is a space I can walk around in and enjoy myself and hang out with my friends. But they are definitely private. Like, you read the rules to any mall, if they can kick you out for just not buying stuff. I mean, it is their home. Like, they can do whatever rules they want. You take a photograph, just a photograph, they can kick you out. It's a hassle to do so they're not going to do it unless they feel they don't want you there. Then they will enforce that rule. Now that said, the crazy part of this is that we have a private space inside of the private space. You know, after having been kicked out of our own homes, the door ultimately results in us having the sanctuary that we obviously needed. I think when people talk to me about why they're excited about the secret apartment in the mall, a lot of it is around language about having a space that they can consider their own. And they sort of like project onto the mall space as like the most private space, maybe because it's double private. They like the idea that there's a space where they can sort of like really be themselves or manifest themselves. And I think this is an instinct that everyone has from like the very beginning. We go womb, and then we're like building forts. We got sticks and blankets, and then we're going to cushions. We're graduating to chief force. We hit a dormitory. We're renting. We're buying homes. Like, we're always trying to like build spaces that are for us, and that's a private impulse. Now understand that this group of 8 people are coming from a culture of like collaborative living. That is a very different, and that is my preference. My God, you put me in 10,000 square feet with 8 other people, I'm at peace. That's where I feel the most bliss and the most safe and the most boundless. Cities can't program for that. They have no idea. When every time the city hall is like, oh, we're gonna make spaces for artists. Nah, once will they put on the table large collaborative live workspace. It doesn't even exist as an idea in their mind. And that's a space I like because it lives between that public and private. Fort Thunder was incredible because it was open door policy effectively. So many people visited Fort Thunder because they could literally just like walk right into it. And so many shows, so it was a public offering of art to everybody who knew to go. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but
One of the things that AS220 did, because we had lived together illegally and all of that same kind of stuff, when we developed our first legal building on Empire Street, we made the 3rd floor communal live spaces with shared bathrooms and kitchen. It still exists. There are private loft, affordable loft apartments and stuff, and studio apartments now. But that communal environment, which is what, about 11 people, Susan, I think? I think it's 11 people that share this space, still exists, and it's critical to maintaining the sort of integrity of the organization, you know.
yeah, a lot of young artists have come up to me and they're like, how do I find this thing? How do I create these environments? I'm like, you gotta live with other artists, or at least people who are different than you. And it's at the minimum is 4. Like you gotta have at least 4 people who are together to make it get weird. And there's 3, you can always outcast one person, but at 4, and that's where you can start to create like chemistry that can affect your life. So.
Okay, a couple more questions. Yes, right here. Yes.
You talked about cities learning how to use art, and I think as urban artists, I was thinking a lot about this film, and we see this here in Hartford and in Providence, but urban art, murals, sculptures have become very commercialized. Tourist attractions, Instagrammable backgrounds. And so I guess I wonder, more than even just your musings as urban artists, what do you say to us, the audience, the interactors, about how we don't desensitize to the art, especially with also the aspect that this is making art affordable and a career for some people.
All right, let's talk about Wynwood in Miami. You all know about Wynwood in Miami? It was a rundown kind of car parts and car garages and junkyards and all of this kind of stuff. And kids started illegally throwing up graffiti murals and stuff. It suddenly started drawing people into the district, and everything started to change. Now it's an extremely commercial district. Now, is it the arts that makes it, like, art's a bad thing because it did this? And it also impacted the neighborhoods around it, and not in all the best ways. Prices started going up, all of that kind of stuff. There's a certain level of gentrification. But I also think we want art. Now, how do we do it and protect it in the public? Now, I met with one of the local artists there when this phenomenon was first happening in Miami. And he said, at first, we would throw stuff up illegal. Then it caught on that this is a good promotion thing. They started bringing mural artists in from all over the world. And he said, now I'm twice as pissed off. Except these mural artists, this moves me, started hiring the local artists to help execute the murals. Now, they're interacting and collaborating with world-famous artists that they only read about or saw in books. Then they started commissioning more and more of the local artists to put stuff up. I don't know where to go with that. They totally gentrified this area, but how much did they gentrify the immediate area when there were a lot of unoccupied spaces like the downtown of Providence? It was completely unoccupied downtown, right? So I don't know where to go to this. I don't think there's a definitive way of just saying this is right and that is wrong. I think there are responsible ways to invest money in communities.
Yeah.
Right? Without dislocating everybody that lives there or works there or provides a bodega there or does whatever the hell it is that they do. Anyway.
Yeah. I'll tell you a bummer thing. Post-pandemic, we were trying to get back into sort of making public art. We'd love that art to be funded so we can survive as artists. We reached out to a couple of museums, got some great responses, got into the final stages of talking to them about making public art, doing community art, put numbers on the table. Everything is good. We're about to sign contracts and they go, oh, by the way, we found your social media. I'm like, oh, all right, yeah, that sounds awesome. They're like, why don't you use it? I'm like, because I don't know, we don't like social media. They're like, we're really sorry, we can't hire you. I was like, well, why not? I was like, well, you only have 300 followers. I'm like, what's happening here? And I was like, what's the magic number? They're like, 10,000. I was like, so it was the first time I had thrown in my face the idea that the museum had a responsibility to share the art as much as possible, and that was part of their equation. That they wanted to hire us, and they also wanted to protect that investment by making sure that more people would see the art. And it was the first time I had ever been like rubbed up against the algorithm machine. That said, I'm gonna say it loud. We started using Instagram in October. So we're at Tape Art. For God's sakes, follow us because we need to be employable. So we're not near 10,000, but we do need your help. So I would appreciate it.
What is it? What is it?
We're just at Tape Art. Yeah, you'll see blue and green tape. You'll know it's us. So, but that's also part of the equation. It's totally flummoxing us right now because it's been an odd journey to sort of have been in the arts for so long and watching the wild change in who will have interest in you. Because our practices remain it's evolved, but relatively simple and the same for so many decades.
Okay, another question. Yes, right here.
First of all, love the movie, love your art.
Oh.
I think there hasn't been enough conversation tonight about how beautiful your art is.
Thank you.
That kind of took me by surprise because I was like, no, because you've seen this movie and you're like, oh, these cool kids are like breaking and along, and then like by the way he's an artist, like bam, and you're like, oh wow, okay, that's really great. I feel like this is a very specific Gen X story, that this is we were the free range kids, like come home when you see the lights go on. Your parents don't know where you are. You're finding the tunnels in the city and building your fort. And the generation now is like, well, it didn't happen unless it's on Instagram. And we're like, I don't have an Instagram. I don't care. I have it. It's only for my friends. So, and I also feel another thing that's sort of like getting to that I think is interesting is as like I take care of my mother. She's a senior, and you're looking at like these old age retirement facilities that for her generation is totally different than what Gen X is gonna want. Gen X wants to move into the mall and live with their friends and go to the movies and have that cool apartment and always be, I don't know, rebelling in a way that's not like, oh, I'm gonna write an essay for Instagram about it, but in a way that is
Which is important also.
So yeah, but it's like there's just a subversive. I don't need to be a public face to make my art, and so I just that's all. I don't even think I have a question. I just talk about your art, and
I concur.
Great.
All right, so we're going to end with the last question being not a question. But, stick around. You don't have to go. It's like,
Wait, so I want to shout out a person. Yeah. Glenn. Glenn is in the audience. That guy right there. Hello. Hold on. Glenn is here. Glenn is going to give you, we go talk to Glenn, he's going to give you a cardboard cutout of the key we use to get into the apartment. It's in that black plastic bag. This is your job.
Want me to do
Yeah, it'll be your job.
Okay,
So,
Dave?
have you ever?
Never. But, you always got to try.
Glenn and I are seeing each other we just met each other right before the film. We haven't seen each other since we bumped into each other that day, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
There was a small detail he shared with me that I absolutely love. As you know, he was there to run the Shadowbox workshop. And I found out that during the entire weekend that they were running the Shadowbox workshop, only one party came to do the Shadowbox. or less. Yeah.
It was a whole weekend. It was a
Whole
whole weekend
weekend.
long. Only 3 guys. We were expecting like moms. It was a Mother's Day thing. It was moms and kids. And that's why everybody, all my fellow employees were like, oh, what's going on with these guys? You know, I'm like,
Yeah, a lot of it I did. So when this movie opened at the mall, I did 26 Q&As in 4 days, and in that location, a lot of people are asking, like, would Glenn rat you out? Like, did this whole thing come to an end because Glenn has loose lips and sinks ships? Like, which I've informed them the answer is a hard no, but we haven't talked. Is that?
nope, never.
The answer is no.
It was like 40 the whole time.
Zipped.
Completely.
Zipped.
Secret.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because
you could have a dead body. What's wrong with
yeah.
I would say, in fact, that one scene of me sort of looking a little scared, like, what the hell's going on here, is sort of me being protective of them. I was kind of looking around to see who was in the store and making sure they weren't anywhere near them, you know, so.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Thank you.
we'll all be in the lobby, and you can come and hang out, and we'll talk with you. Glenn will have the keys, so just like ask him for a key, and we'll give it to you. And thank you so much for coming to sit down. The movie has a national release right now. SecretMallApartment.com has the full list of where it's showing. So if you've got a friend in Chicago, tell them about it. It's going to show in Alaska. They gotta know. The word of mouth is how this movie is spreading. So please hit the website, look down there, and be like, I've got a friend in Key West. Let them know about it.
It's showing here twice a day for at least a week, and we'll hold it over if we get good crowds.
What was that again, secretmall.com?
SecretMallApartment.com. Okay.
Thank you to Bert Crenca. Thank you to Michael Townsend. Thank you to Glenn Umberto. And thank you to you.